Thank you very much for joining us on the Photo Flunky Show, episode 125. This week, we're going to be talking about something a little more practical, how to travel with your camera and DSLR equipment. Hi, welcome to the show. My name is William Beem.
I am Mrs. Beem. My name is Lee. I like my name.
And we're here to help you find your inner motivation to take better photos and amaze your viewers. And one of the things that you need to do that is actually take your camera with you, which is kind of why we wanted to talk about how to travel with your camera. That is something that I kind of took for granted. It wasn't something I was going to come up with as a topic for the show until I started running across people that just didn't really know what to do, how to prepare their gear, how to carry it, what to carry it in, and most definitely whether they should do it as a carry-on or stow it in their luggage.
It's not a stupid question at all, actually. I mean,
it is one that I took for granted. And I thought, you know what, let's go over it just so we've got this out there as a resource for anybody who maybe hasn't had a chance to travel with their camera gear yet and might have a few questions of what they take, how they take it, and why they take some of the things that they do. But before we get into that, I want to let you know that show notes are going to be available at williambeem.com/episode 125. If you've listened to the podcast and you haven't actually checked out our show notes, I hope you do, because I'm not just putting up like a couple of things like we talked about this, and this. I'm writing full blog posts over there and going into detail. Sometimes I'm covering details that we don't necessarily cover in the podcast. So it's actually worthwhile sometimes to go back and look at the show notes. If you're a fan of the show, and thank you very much for being one, check out some of the show notes if you haven't done so already. And of course, we also want to let you know that there will be links to subscribe to this show either on the show notes page or at photoflunky.com, where we've got a player so you can listen to this episode or any of our previous ones. Let's start with talking about the very first thing that comes to mind. And I took this for granted, but there are people that have done otherwise. And that is, do you carry your gear as carry-on items or as stowed luggage?
Primarily for me as carry-on, but I did stow some stuff.
And did you ever have any problems with that?
Never.
I have heard different reports for people with their luggage as to whether something was in it or not that was taken out. And I don't distrust people generally who work for the airport and are carrying things back and forth. But there is another reason why I'm going to advise that you don't put your expensive electronic camera gear and lenses in there. Your tripod and maybe some accessories, I think, are fine to stow in your luggage. But some of the items that are really expensive and fragile and maybe tempting for others is because of an experience that you told me about when your luggage came through open with everything exposed, going everywhere on
like quite literally.
Go ahead, share that little story.
I've never really been back to Philadelphia, and there's nothing about the city that makes me not want to go back, but my only experience was a transfer at the airport, and it was an international flight, so I had to collect my luggage, and my luggage did show up on the carousel, but first, quite a while before that, individual items came up on the carousel. I was sitting there snickering away with my brother, and somebody's underwear is on there. Oh my goodness. And we were laughing ourselves silly until I said, I've got a lot of stuff that looks like that. And when my bag did show up, it looked like one of the, those forklifts?
Yeah.
It was like one of those things that pierced the bag, and it had mangled stuff and it had come out. Needless to say, I grabbed the bag. I just acted like anything on the carousel had nothing to do with me, and I left. That's what travel insurance is for.
Did you get all your underwear?
I left it all there.
Well, this is kind of my point. It's not so much that I'm worried about theft. I mean, yeah, some people have reported theft, but I think that's less of a worry for me than the way baggage can be handled. We've been sitting on the airplane before, and we've seen baggage being loaded, and people are they're picking it up and they're tossing it on the ramp. We've had our last trip. We just got back from Las Vegas not long ago. And when we got home to Orlando, our luggage was soaking wet and greasy. Like
it had fallen off a cart or something into like a pool of water. It was crazy.
In other words, your bags are treated like they're in a cage with an 800-pound gorilla. That was an old American Tourister commercial. They put the suitcase in there and let the gorilla beat it up.
Well, they are, but also remember that when you've got a 50-pound limit for a bag, assuming that some people are packing their bags close to the 50-pound limit, that is heavy for one person to pick up. And when they doing a whole flight, loading a whole flight's worth of bags, they are trying to throw the things. They don't want to drop it. So these things are getting battered around. It's not that they're intentionally being negligible. They are just, these things are heavy.
Well, if they get battered around, they get on moving vehicles that are vibrating for example, if you put your camera and an attached lens inside that bag, who knows if that mount is going to hold secure or crack off. If you've got optics inside of, the lenses inside of that bag and it gets smacked around, are they going to get shifted out of place? Are they going to get broken? I think these cameras are just simply too delicate to survive, some of the luggage handling that goes on.
But it's not just that. If you look at your luggage instructions from the airlines, they will all tell you that no, it is law that the lithium batteries need to be on your person. They cannot go in checked baggage, which means, if you wanted to put your camera in there, you take the batteries out. Why would you take your batteries out and keep them on you and then stick your camera into the checked bags? I think most people would keep their camera with them.
I think most people will too, but I've known a few people that said, look, I don't want to lug things around the airport. I don't want to deal with it, particularly if you're going on a trip where you've got a lot of gear with you. Sometimes if you've got connections and transfers, it's a pain to carry some heavy gear with you. And that's just the way it is. I think that my recommendation really is what you can carry with you, you do. I have seen people that do check their luggage. For example, I've watched professional photographers who have a lot of gear to carry, and they've got some professional luggage, designed to protect their stuff. They have hard Pelican cases and, equipment management cases. They go up to the sky cap and they give special instructions and they pay and they tip well to make sure that gear arrives where it's supposed to. But they've also packaged and prepared it for anything that might happen in the delivery. For a lot of people that are going on travel photography trips that don't need to carry so much stuff that it has to be in a Pelican case, and the other part of a Pelican case, if you're not familiar with what that is, it is a very large, hard-sided plastic case that you can lock. Well, that's going to be heavy to lug around once you get to your destination too. And, for commercial photographers, that's what they got to do because they need to have the gear. For travel photographers, if you can go a little bit lighter, you probably don't want to have to mess with that.
No, absolutely
you want to be
not.
mobile.
Yeah. But you can mix it up. There are things you can do. There are certain things to have on you. There are other things where the risk is low, not non-existent, but low.
So our advice really is take what the items that you want to protect, your camera, your lenses, and obviously your batteries because of the requirements in the USA, at least for the FAA. You want to take those with you on board. Now, how you take them is going to depend upon a number of factors. And we've got a little section here on choosing a camera bag. From what I've got in my collection, and trust me, I have excess baggage. I've got a closet filled with different camera bags. You've got a choice between rolling camera bags, a messenger style bag, a sling style, or a backpack. And that's kind of really all I know about. Maybe there's a tote bag in there somewhere. I've never bought a tote bag for my cameras.
Yeah, no.
All right. I've gone on a few trips with a rolling camera bag, and that is really nice when you're going through the airport and you've got even two wheels where you can kind of lug it, or four wheels. I've got a four-wheel one that I love those things in the airport because they've always got those nice little tiled surfaces and you just kind of glide along while everybody else is lugging their stuff.
Yeah, you're so cool. I'm not.
I know. I feel impressive while I'm in the airport. Once I get to my destination, that rolling bag is not so handy to take around town or, to the location where I want to go. But you can bring a lot of gear inside of a rolling case. I've got, I think it's called an airport takeoff, and it actually has a little pocket with backpack straps. I've never used them. You know why?
Why?
Because once you fill that thing up, it's heavy. We're talking about like a rollerboard kind of luggage filled with glass and cameras. I would hate to actually try and put on the backpack straps and carry that over. But if you're going someplace where you don't have a smooth surface, it's an option, but it's not one I would recommend.
So assuming that you had a checked bag anyway, and you want to take your rolling bag with you on board the flight, what you could do for when you get there is to take your smaller camera bag or whatever the one is that's the right size for walking around and doing what you're doing when you get there, and stick that into your checked baggage. And I've taken a smaller camera bag that I wanted to use for light, travel days. And what I did was I stuffed clothing in there and then put it into my checked bag so that the space was well used. And then I had both, but I had the protection of the bigger bag in the cabin on the flight. What
I would do with a rolling bag is I would take that if I needed to take a lot more gear than I would for just a travel trip. So for example, if I'm going someplace to do portraits, I want to have my 7200 millimeter. I want to have my 24-70. I might have 2 camera bodies in there, some flashes, and a few different accessories. That's a lot to take and lug on your backpack. You can, but it means that you're going to be, lugging that around through the airport. And I really, if I'm going to carry that much gear, I would much rather roll it. And then in my stowed luggage, I would put a bag like you suggested, because I don't need to take all of it with me when I'm out walking around.
Yeah, and that's just something else to keep in mind.
Now, also, I'll take that if I'm just going to someplace where I'm going to do a studio shoot, which I've done before, either for workshops or for what have you, or even for conferences, where I don't necessarily, I want to have everything there, but I don't need it with me every moment. So I'll just take the rolling bag there, pull out the body and lens that I want, and then walk around with that. I think that works out nicely too. The messenger style, I think this is going to be a matter of preference. Some people like it. Some people hate it because it's putting a lot of weight on one shoulder.
Yep. And that's why I don't use one for cameras.
All right. So tell me, you've tried it before. What happened with you?
Exactly what you said. I have to keep switching shoulders because it digs into me. And, I've got a smaller frame. I just find that the weight it's not even the weight, it's where the strap is kind of putting pressure on. And even with messenger bags with a nice padding, it's just the weight concentrated on that small surface area. It gets a bit much if you're walking for a long time.
I think people walking with a messenger bag, there's 2 styles of doing it, obviously. One of them is let's say if you want to put it on your left shoulder and the bag is on your left side, for me, it just kind of slips off. No matter how much grip they kind of put on the strap or the padding underneath, there's always if you bend over one way, then the bag suddenly slides off. The answer to that is to put it over your head and have the strap on the opposite side of where the bag is.
Oh, that's the only way I do it, but it was just too much for me.
Now, close to the messenger bag is a sling style bag. And I've got one of those from Think Tank. They no longer make it. It was called a Sling-O-Matic, and they made, 3 different sizes of it. I really love this because it was kind of like a backpack, but yet it would go over the shoulder. And then whenever I wanted to access my gear, I would just slide it around in front of me and it would appear kind of sideways. I'd unzip it and then there's all my gear. I could just reach in, or sometimes I could just use it almost like as a shelf to kind of balance me so I could have my elbows resting on that while I was taking a photo. I love that bag and I've still got it and I still use it from time to time. And it would also carry a laptop, but it has the same issue that you're going to have it on one shoulder and it might, it's going to get a hot spot on that shoulder, or it's going to get too much weight on one side, and then you end up flipping it to the other side. This bag was very good about flipping from one side to the other, but the same issue was present, and that's why it was good about flipping over. They knew you would have to.
Yeah, I had a whole slew of issues with my sling bag, which was a different one. I think it was a Low Pro. The bag itself was fine. It was completely unusable for me. I just did not enjoy it. It was the first serious camera bag that I got, and it didn't last very long.
Now, you mentioned something to me that
I'm sorry, laughing at me. I'm being dead serious though.
No, I'm laughing because she had a problem with straps that go across your body that might affect women that didn't affect me, and I just wanted to bring it up just because if you're a woman listening to this is one of the reasons why maybe you might not want to use a messenger or sling bag.
Okay, the messenger bag, actually, I don't have a problem. The design of the sling bag, or particularly the one that William had, mine was probably similar. You didn't get to see it because it didn't make the grade for that long, is that you can kind of swing that strap around to lift the bag and it opens in front of you. So you're holding it when you open it. In other words, you don't have to take it off to access your camera or your lenses or whatever you want to get.
Right.
Now, when you slide that bag, it kind of moves in a circle. So when you're pulling the bag around in front of you, it's kind of pulling your shirt up. I like to wear tank tops. I don't like sleeves. They're long sleeves or no sleeves. So summertime, I'm walking around, I've got maybe a tank top on or top with spaghetti straps or something. That was fine getting the camera out. Then I put the camera back in, or I'm done taking it out. I close the bag and I want to swing it back. When it goes back in the other direction, it does not pull the top up towards your face. It pulls it right down. And all I'm going to say is nobody tipped me. Yeah, I know.
I didn't have this problem. Then again, I don't wear tank tops when I'm out and about, but it's just something to think about. It's like if you're going to move the bag around on your shoulder and back and forth, is it going to pull your clothing in such a way that
it's off?
You don't want to give a free show necessarily.
Yeah, it's not pulling. I mean, it was just like pulling the clothing right off.
All right. The last one on our list is a backpack.
Flash photography.
Flash. I'm sorry. Okay. The backpack. I was really not a fan of backpacks. I bought a few of them and I found them cumbersome because, well, I mean, you've got to just stop, take them off, put them down, get your stuff in and out, until I came across the Peak Design Everyday Backpack. And I like that one, but I wasn't a fan of having to carry things on both shoulders.
I love my backpack.
I don't know why I was like that. I'm kind of an oddball that way. But the Peak Design one is kind of like the sling bag that I talked about, where there are zippers on either side. So you can like drop off one shoulder and then sling it around, access things, and then put it back on.
Yeah, I've got a basic, I think it's a Tamarack Adventurer. It's old. I got it in 2012, I believe. I still love that bag. I will cry when that bag is no longer usable. Hopefully that never happens. And I'm not generally a backpack person, but first of all, like I'd go out with my camera and I'd be walking for 12, 16, 17 hours with this bag on my back. And all the, whatever I had in for the day. That bag gets significantly heavier as each hour goes by during the day, and being able to distribute the weight evenly and also have the option to just have it on one shoulder. The other thing is when I'm in a thick crowd, I like to actually strap it so it's over my shoulders, but the bag is in front of my body and I can hold it. And the reason I do that is because, when you've got something on your back and you turn around, you don't know how close the person is behind you or somebody to the side of you. And I didn't want to hit anybody in the face, especially kids or, somebody who's maybe shorter than me. So it gave me options. And honestly, I don't like backpacks, but for my camera bag, I've not been persuaded to change. And I love the one that I have.
We wanted to tell you that you've got a few choices here. I am actually very, very happy with my backpack now. For the longest time, I used the sling bag, and I had a few messenger bags before that. I think one of the backpacks I had earlier was a Crumpler, and that's an Australian brand of bag. They make nice quality bags. Yeah. The one that I thought was a nice feature that I liked about this one is it wasn't accessible from behind you. The part that goes up against your back, there was a zipper there, so you had to take it off and unzip it and access your gear, which was a good theft deterrent.
Yeah.
But in practice, I didn't have people trying to steal things from me. What instead happened, it was a pain in the neck to have to take the bag off, get what I wanted, change things out, and then zip it up and put it back on. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually happier with the Peak Design bag now. Now, this is the part about what you're going to take with you for the flight versus what you want to have when you're at your destination. And the two may or may not be the same. I'm really happy with, if I'm going to take a lot of gear, I'm going to take the rolling bag and then another bag in my luggage for walking around, because I'm not going to walk around with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Our advice really is don't take everything. I am the kind of person who overpacks and then finds out, I didn't really need that after I got there, but yet I still had to lug it back and forth.
I used to always say I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, but that was maybe taking it where I was going. I didn't necessarily take everything out. Actually, I never took everything out with me on the day once I got to my destination to shoot. Now, this depends on the type of trip you're taking. If it's a day trip or a short weekend trip, you'd probably pack differently. And also likewise, if you're traveling with, minimal luggage, it depends on your airlines, what they allow for you. But I didn't want to leave things behind, but I didn't necessarily take everything. I used to just pick and say, look, I want to get some, for example, I'm just throwing things out there, maybe some wide angle shots. I want some telephoto shots of this and this and this, and everything else was just, whatever. I've also learned from experience that when you have a lens and you wish you had a different lens, it doesn't matter. Somehow you make stuff work and you get really interesting stuff, even if you don't have the right lens with you. And this has happened to me a number of times just because I've grabbed a lens and I've grabbed the wrong one. And it's not the end of the world.
No, it's not. But I think that if you've visualized some certain shots that you want to get, the lens you take matters. And this is why I like the rolling bag. For example, a few years ago, I decided I wanted to take a road trip. So I drove from Orlando up to Washington, D.C. and back. And I had a couple of planned stops along the way. On the way back, one of the stops was in Savannah and on that Oak Avenue at the Wormslow Estate. I'd seen that photo from a number of other people. I said, I want to go there and get that. And I got out there and I set up and I started off doing a wide angle shot. And I was looking at my results that this is not the right look because the trees were set very far apart, much more so than it looked like in other people's photos. So I thought, this doesn't look like the shot I want to get. And I drove away. I was really disappointed. And I thought, wait a minute, I can do this. I turned around and I pulled out my 70-200 because since I was in the car, I had the rolling bag filled with all the
Yeah.
gear. And I put that telephoto up on there. I got the shot that I was looking for. The trees look much more compressed to each other, and I got a nice view down the road. Having the lens choice really did make the difference.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if you're traveling and you wanted to go light, you might take something like a 28 to 300 millimeter lens,
Yeah.
and they would work just fine with that because you don't necessarily need the wide open aperture like you would for some other shots
you don't.
on a shot like that. But the idea is you've got two decisions to make when you're choosing how you're going to carry your gear. Is one is for the airport or whatever transportation you're doing, and the other one is for what you need maybe after you've arrived at your destination.
For sure. And look, this is where your method of travel has a big influence on how you pack and what you can take. Obviously, if you're driving, you've got control over the luggage in your car and how it's treated.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really take as much as you have space to take. With an airline, you have restrictions on you. Now, William is used to driving places for photos. I do not like road trips. I do not like being in a car for a long time. I fly everywhere. If it's going to take me more than four hours, I guess, to get somewhere.
You don't want to go in a car.
I don't want to go in a car. So the way that we pack is different, and the way that you travel for different things is going to be different, and that will change up the way, your limitations or the flexibility that you have.
Well, the rolling bag is convenient for airplanes, and also for tossing in your car. If you want to carry or you need to carry more gear and you want to do it in a comfortable, convenient way. But that's it. It is not convenient for being around out on town. So it's not an expense that everybody needs or wants to make. You can carry your gear in a backpack and then just take the little pieces that you need for a given day trip out at your destination. But the trade-off is you're going to have a bit more of a sore back for lugging things around the airport and during your travel days.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I've done that before too.
I used to do a little bit of best of both, quite honestly. Like, just going back to the flying, I used to check some of my stuff and keep some of the stuff on me because it wasn't just a camera bag wasn't enough for me. Yeah, I wanted a cardigan. I might have wanted a change of clothes because usually I was flying somewhere where there was a different climate and I needed to switch out or store something. I don't like carrying stuff. I want everything to be in one bag. It's like one thing, you're not going to lose it. You got more than one thing, you might lose something. I would put anything in checked luggage if it was not too fragile. I took a bit of a risk. It was a calculated risk. So things like tripods, even things like your filters and stuff, as long as it was well wrapped and well packed, I'd be fine with that. Memory cards, I think I even traveled with a flash in checked baggage. I don't know if it was an accident or on purpose. But my camera body and the charger, I'd charge my batteries and then keep my batteries on me, but I'd stick the charger in there. I figured if something happened to the charger, two fully charged batteries would give me time to make a plan if I got there and there was a problem.
That's one thing that's different between us. I would never put my memory cards in checked luggage.
Yeah, I stuck mine in checked luggage.
The reason is if you get to your destination and your luggage isn't there, well, then you can't take any photos. And if you got your photos on there and something happens to the memory cards in the bag, then you've lost the results of your trip. Those memory cards always go with me.
See, I always travel with a laptop. My camera takes two memory cards. I'd have two full memory cards, one in each slot. As far as I was concerned, if it came down to that, I had two memory cards to work with, and I do back stuff up at the end of every day if I'm out, away from home anyways. And that gave me a bit of a safety net. You kind of got to pick your battles. You cannot obsess to a point that you're not enjoying yourself. I mean, I didn't want to live obsessing about the safety of my stuff. I just wanted to be as wise as I could about it.
I understand that. And people are going to come up with different priorities for what they take with them and what they don't. We got a small list of items to bring with you. And the obvious ones are going to be your camera body and your selected lenses. You don't want to bring every lens that you've got because just what if case. Lenses get heavy.
Yep.
You want to think about what shots you want to do and be judicious with what do I actually need versus how much stuff do I have. I've got, 3 heavy zoom lenses. I've got some prime lenses, and I don't take all of those with me. And I don't even take all the zoom lenses on every trip. Sometimes I might only take one, if depending if I know I'm just going to go for a walkabout. I'll probably take my 24-70. I won't lug that heavy 70-200 unless I know I'm going to do something that requires that kind of length or compression, or if I'm doing portraits. Obviously, you're going to need your batteries, and that's one of the things I've seen people do before. Matter of fact, I did it once in my life, and I haven't done it again. I would remember I went on the trip to Cuba. I took batteries with me, but I didn't realize that they were exhausted. So when I was trying to take shots in the middle of some action, my camera would just shut off.
Oh,
I'd
no.
recharge the batteries and then they wouldn't hold the charge. And I was in the middle of the action the next day and they'd shut off. So not only batteries and a battery charger, but make sure the batteries aren't worn out and they can actually hold a charge.
Yeah. They've got a shelf life.
Yeah, they do. And I made a mistake. I went on this kind of a trip of a lifetime with bad batteries. I got a lot of shots, but I didn't get every shot that I wanted to get because those things just kept dying on me.
Well, you didn't get every shot that you could have got either.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because the batteries were not fresh, they were not reliable.
Yeah.
Memory cards, I go with an abundance of memory cards. I always take more than I ever need because you know what? Last thing I want to do is get someplace and want to take some shots and not be able to because I ran out of memory cards. I've got a little wallet I carry them in, and of course I need a card reader with them because the next thing I want to take is a computer. And like you mentioned, at the end of every day, I want to have a backup of those photos. I want my photos ultimately to be in 3 places, but while I'm traveling, 2 places. I don't know if I'll have the bandwidth to upload them to the cloud, but if they're on the card and they're on the computer, then I'm feeling a little better about my lucks, or my chances of getting home with decent shots.
Yeah.
The other kind of must-have things are lens cleaners because let's face it, photography is a dirty business.
Yes.
There are thumbprints out there, and also a strap because I'm usually the kind of person that likes to do a walkabout. No matter, even if I'm going to a studio environment, there's going to be someplace in a town. If I'm going to someplace I've not been before, I want to do a walkabout with my camera too.
See, my strap is always on my camera, and although I've got the up strap where you can just kind of release the clips and remove it, the reason that I would put it on for travel is because I always thought if they wanted me to take it out at security or if they wanted to inspect, I mean, sometimes they swab stuff. It depends what's going on at the airports. I wanted that strap on because if somebody else had to pick up my camera, I want them to hold it by the strap, and therefore it was on. It was just that simple.
No, it's a good plan. All right, we mentioned don't take everything because you accumulate a lot of gear, but that means you've also got to carry it. So think about what you need and just take what you need. I know your advice, and it's something I've said before. It's like, I'd rather have it and not need it, but that also means I've got to lug it.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten to the point where I think, do I really need this? I question that more than I did in the past.
I don't mind the stuff that's safe to go in checked luggage. I just don't want to be hanging on to stuff on me, for hours on end, if I don't need it.
We've got a few optional items on the list as well. And really, this is going to depend upon the kind of photography that you want to do. So you may need or want a flash or multiple flashes. You may want some light modifiers and lighting stands. And again, those are things that you're not going to take as, at least the light modifiers and light stands, you're not going to take as carry-on. You might want to take the flashes because, again, you've got the issue with the batteries. And also it's electronics that might get damaged in checked luggage.
But reflectors are pretty cool. You can just slip them into the side pocket of your suitcase.
Yeah, reflectors are great. And I don't mind checking those at all. A monopod and or a tripod, depending upon what you're doing.
My tripod always got checked.
My tripod always goes in my suitcase. I don't really have the desire to carry it with me. I've got a number of camera bags and backpacks where there's a pocket where you can put it on the outside. And I've seen people do that and they take it with them and without any problem. But I'm the paranoid kind of guy that afraid I will find somebody who says, put this in that little measuring thing down there to see if it's within the size limit of your checked or carry-on luggage.
Yeah, I checked mine, but for carrying around, my bag didn't come with one, but I modified and I bought some fishing line.
Yeah.
And I actually sewed that little strap did not come on my bag. And I've got little reflectors on it as well, because people don't see a tripod and I don't want anybody getting hit in the face. So,
I usually put mine inside of my suitcase, which means that I'm going to be, if I have to check luggage. And I'll be honest, I'm paranoid. I don't know anybody who's had a problem with a small tripod attached to their bag going as carry-on luggage. And there are times that I would like to go with just the camera bag and a rollerboard and be done with it that way. But when I'm carrying the tripod, I'm paranoid about it, and not rightly so.
Well, you can protect it, appropriately when you package yourself into your checked bag.
Yeah, and another item is filters. Whether you want a polarizing filter or a neutral density filter, depending on what you want, those are some nice things to have, particularly if you're doing some travel photography or landscape photography.
Yeah, checked for me. Not heavy, but just any extra bulk on me is also a pain in the butt.
I agree. All right, the last thing we wanted to bring up was travel insurance.
Always.
Lee, you're the expert on this.
I just didn't travel without travel insurance until I got married. It was inconceivable to me. I always took travel insurance and always made sure that my camera was covered.
All right. So what were the benefits that you got with the travel insurance?
Well, the travel insurance covered me for accident, for damage.
Did it cover you for theft?
It covered me for theft, assuming that I took due precautions. And honestly, it didn't cost me that much. It was like maybe $20 add-on, just to make sure that I used to always pay for the excess waiver so that I didn't have to pay any portion of it if anything happened. I never used it. I never needed it, but I felt more comfortable having it because I felt like if I was going to get my stuff replaced, I was willing to take a hit and rent something as an emergency for my trip. Whereas if you've lost something and you have to pay to replace it eventually and you have no camera, trying to justify paying rental costs is kind of, man, you got a lot of stuff going on in your head. So for me, it was just easier to do that.
Well, and think about some of the circumstances where this could really apply. We mentioned like if you put your camera in your bag and something gets damaged there. As far as theft, that could happen anywhere you go. I know there's always been a lot of complaints about traveling to Europe and you sit down in a cafe, you're having a nice time, and then you look down and then your camera bag is gone. But we've also heard reports, from photographers going in San Francisco that want to take shots of the Golden Gate Bridge up on the hill. And people are actually going up there and robbing them now because they know that's where people with expensive camera gear are going to be hanging out at night.
Yeah.
So it's not just a foreign problem. It happens anywhere you go. There's potential for damage or theft. And like Lee said, for $20, that's a good set of peace of mind.
Well, that was on top of my trip insurance, but I just, I kind of feel like you spend how much on a trip? Are you really going to go and try and cost cut on extra 100 and something bucks, if you're spending thousands? And that was the way I justified it. I looked at the cost of the trip and what I had with me and then figured, and for ourselves, if there was medical stuff or whatever, if we're going out of the country, you want that covered. So
yeah, because you were traveling internationally and you were taking 3-week trips.
I was, but I also traveled locally, and nationally, where I would take different kinds of insurance, but I still wanted to know that my gear was covered, maybe at a lower rate. I didn't need to worry about the healthcare stuff. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that I was covered as well. If anything happened to me, I wanted extra cash going to the family. Thankfully, nothing happened.
I'm glad about that.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for listening to the Photo Flunky Show. As I mentioned, show notes are going to be available at williambeam.com/episode 125. Hey, and if you're a Lightroom user and Lightroom is getting a little slow on you, I've got an ebook that can help you out. It is called Lightroom Classic Performance Hacks. It is free, and you can find it at williambeam.com/LRHacks. And of course, we would love it if you would subscribe to us on iTunes. Just go to williambeam.com/iTunes. You can also find us on Google Play Music, Blueberry, and Stitcher Radio. Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed this. And honestly, I'd like to ask you one question. Give us a little feedback. Let us know if there's something that you're struggling with or something that you'd like to hear on a future episode of the Photo Flunky Show. We would love to know about it and see if we can help you out. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next week.